So yeah, we are following up a great discussion panel on governance model, and in order to keep gender quality in order, we are this time a very male-dominated panel. So I will have excellent three guests today who represent actually really different angles in the blockchain ecosystem. We have Chris from Tezos, Robbie from Animoca Brands, and Pavel from CoinFirm. And I represent IKEA, Clean Energy Services team anchored at sustainability and innovation in our global team in Sweden. So first of all, just for the participants of this event and this session, our topic today is a part of decentralized web and data economy, which is one of the five pillars of this conference this year. And it's actually the first panel for this section of the conference. And we're going to pick one of the hottest topic in the DLT space, at least for the last year or so, which are NFTs. So first, let me introduce the three speakers, or I would rather like you guys to introduce yourself. And let me ask you this question, looking at the decentralized web and creators economy, where do your companies come from, and how? What is your contact surface with this specific area of the DLT ecosystem? Robbie, can you start, please?
Sure, I'll go first. I'm Robbie Young. I'm the CEO of Animoca Brands. We are a game developer and entertainment company focused on blockchain games. So that includes both NFTs as well as fungible tokens. And we specialize in working with brands. So we have, we work with some brands you may know. We have games featuring Formula One, MotoGP, as well as our own games such as the Sandbox. And our focus really is on this sort of new evolution of giving property rights to gamers so that they're able to actually own for the first time the digital assets that are in their games that they're playing, as well as being able to transact in and be rewarded by in-game currency that is also tokenized. So I think blockchain has been having a huge impact on the potential for consumers consuming gaming entertainment. And we think this is really just the beginning.
Thank you. Pavel, can you say a few words about your company and yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Pavel Kuskowski, CEO and co-founder of CoinFirm. CoinFirm is a blockchain analytics company. We are on the market since 2016, providing our services across the world to over 250 clients. Last year, we launched AMLT Oracle, which is an AML solution for focus on DeFi projects or decentralized finance, open finance. We see this as a huge market in terms of the future solution, and this market which is also including the non-fungible tokens is actually for this market to grow. We see the need for AML compliance solution, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing solution. That's been extremely successful launch of the products. We have over 20 clients already signed up and growing. And we also see, protocols joining in, like most recently we, invited RSK with token to our client pool, which basically provides us not only DeFi projects, but also protocols who are using and allowing to transact directly with our AML Oracle. AML Oracle is effectively a smart contract which is native for DeFi projects. So you can plug in easily, by deploying on DeFi project. You can plug in directly to our AML Oracle and make your transaction fully compliant. Thank you.
Thanks. And finally, Chris from Tezos.
Thank you. It's great to be here, everyone. My name is Chris Corella. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been involved in 5 Web2 exits. I've joined TQ Tezos to work on new NFT ventures at TQ. And so TQ Tezos is a New York City-based company that works on the Tezos blockchain. We work on everything from the infrastructure to the dev tools to the application layer. And Tezos is a layer 1 blockchain built on a proof of work algorithm. And so that means our NFTs are more eco-friendly than many of the others. And in fact, Tezos NFTs are 6 orders of magnitude more efficient, or require 6 orders of magnitude less energy than Ethereum NFTs. And so that's been a big moment for us and a big selling point for us recently. And then also, just as a general evangelist of Tezos NFTs, I'll point out there was a fine art project that launched today, acutemarket.com, which has a Sundance film launched as an NFT. And Hicket Nunk is a big community project that is growing like mad. And then stay tuned, as we have another marketplace launching at the end of this month.
Excellent. Great to have you with us. So I've wanted to start with a little bit of a shaking statement. And I'd like you to tell me if you would agree or perhaps disagree with this statement. And the statement I've picked for the beginning of this panel is a quote that says, NFTs market is clearly in a bubble. It's actually more of a gambling rather than an investment. So perhaps I'll allow Robbie to start first. And what's your thoughts?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on this?
So I guess this is one of those things that the tricky things about bubbles is we only know they exist after they pop. So that's always a difficult one to prognosticate upon. Definitely, I think, we've been in NFTs now for going on 4 years. And I think that just generally in tech, I've been in tech for 25 years and we've seen plenty of cycles. I think that, our view is we view what's happening with NFTs and blockchain gaming in general to be very much akin to what happened to the web in the mid to late 90s. And I say that in the best possible way, meaning I think we're just at the beginning of a very major revolution in how, networked computing is done and how we share entertainment and content. That said, I think that the last 3 months has been the point where, because of various projects related to art NFTs, as well as some game NFT projects, I think that we've broken through to the popular culture consciousness. And so in that respect, it's not really just sort of a nerdy project being done by people like my fellow panelists and I here anymore, but it's something that people are, people who are less focused on blockchain and our virtual worlds are interested in now as a subject, because when somebody goes and sets a record for spending money on a living artist's artwork, it grabs headlines and it makes people think, okay, so what is this, and should I be paying attention to it? I think that we're at the beginning, and so I'm going to put aside your question of gambling, because I think that actually is a provocative statement that can actually be used about anything we spend money on, to be honest. You could argue that how much I paid for my house was gambling. So I think it all comes down to what the value for the user is, and whether, in our case, we make games. So it's really about whether players have fun. And if they have fun and they get benefit for the time and money they spend with us, then I think that's fabulous.
Thanks a lot. Any thoughts on what Robbie said? Any thoughts on my question? Chris, Pavel?
I think what Robbie said is exactly it's aligned with my thinking. I mean, we are early. I don't think it's a bubble. I mean, we are far from it, and I think we actually are in the proof of concept. So we try to find out what is the framework, what is actually working, what is not working, what are the risks. It was still very early in this trying of the market. So I don't think. I mean, the excitement which we see is, I believe, the indication of the future, because this is, everyone is feeling that, okay, we can digitize, or monetize what is digitized and digitize what is, in real life. So this connection and this link between real life and like art, normal art, and non-fungible tokens and crypto and transactions which you can do internationally, cross-border, that's very exciting for a number of reasons. Even if we look at just to talking about art, if we say that this market is currently not very liquid, and we creating liquidity for this market. It's still proof of concept, so it's still early days, but even imagining this multi-billion market becoming a very liquid market, that's creating huge opportunity. Also, it's fueled by like Coinbase recent IPO. So we see everything is putting together, but I don't think we are there yet in terms of even discussing the market, not to say about bubble.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool, and I'll just take a slightly different perspective, which is one, I don't think we can generalize all NFTs as being in a bubble. NFTs themselves are just a foundational and I think revolutionary technology that provides provenance and ownership. I often get the question, I also don't think of them as investment assets or investments at all. And so I often get the question of, how do I get started in NFTs? And my answer is, find something you love. Something that you want to buy and that you want to hold on to, and that 5 years from now you still want to show to people. And I really think I'm big on the art side of the NFTs, and I think of NFTs as beautiful objects. And objects have value, and the value is often contextualized by the situation. And so a Pele World Cup medal has a certain value because he's the greatest player to play the game. And for internet objects, often the context is the community and the culture around that community. And so I will add that I do think some of the large marketplaces, namely Nifty Gateway and NBA Top Shot, are building a community and culture of day traders. And when you have people day trading NFTs, you start to have unrealistic valuations, and you maybe have something that resembles a bubble that will pop. And I just think that kind of community engagement is bad for all of us working on NFTs.
So true, so true. I actually find NFTs close to my heart. I have been a gamer all my life. Started as a young kid with Atari platform, and I have been always frustrated with the fact that, especially since MMO games came into the market, that you can invest, tons of hours into creating characters in the game and certain digital wealth, but it's never yours. It's always, part of a company that releases the game. So what you, Robbie, said resonates with me a lot. It's in fact, NFTs are like infrastructure for digital ownership and new economy. So this brings me actually to the second quote I've picked for this session, which is on the other spectrum. Perhaps it's a wiser quote. Perhaps it's a more balanced way of looking at NFTs. And let me read it to you. So the new infrastructure of ownership built on the top of DAOs and NFTs is a fundamental layer for the Web 3.0 world, new data economy, and it's essential in moving businesses into the future metaverse. And since you, Chris, said about that you had 2 exits in Web 2.0, I liked it because this is clearly about Web 3.0. Maybe I would allow you to start this. Would you agree or disagree with this statement? How does it resonate with you?
Yeah, so I agree with this statement, and it resonates strongly. And it's one of the main reasons I'm working on this stuff. And I think it's actually the first real building block that we've seen of the metaverse. And I'll just say in 2006, 2007, I worked in the last wave of virtual worlds. We threw around the term metaverse a lot, but ultimately people didn't have ownership, and there was no cross-platform nature to this. And you didn't have an internet, an inventory that traveled with you as you travel, like in the movie or book Ready Player One. I'll also say that I think we often think of the metaverse as a virtual world and a 3-dimensional world, and maybe there are goggles or maybe it's your screen. But I actually think we just live in the metaverse, and we now have ownership of digital objects. We can show them on our phones. There'll be AR, there'll be VR. And yeah, I just think this is a fundamental building block of where we're going.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that the key here is that, this sort of so-called Web 3.0 is built on the idea of not just file transfer, so the ability to download, video and audio and text, but the idea that you're transferring ownership, and that's the fundamental building block. And so that's something that's really, really powerful. And it has huge implications for e-government and finance, of course, and just the sort of infrastructure of daily life. But at the same time, it actually has big implications for entertainment too. And our view, and this is very, self-serving because we're an entertainment company, is we feel like mass consumer adoption is actually going to be driven by entertainment, because people tend to seek out entertainment often more than a more efficient way to do their banking, or something that actually may be quite beneficial to them, but not quite so sexy and fun. Because, we're all tired of standing in line at the government office for paperwork, but, maybe that's not a compelling reason to adopt a new technology necessarily. But when it comes to entertainment products, what we've seen with different kinds of particularly portable technologies, smartphones were largely driven by non-voice, applications, because people really enjoy the entertainment experience. So I think we're quite excited about this idea of being able to transfer value easily and smoothly and efficiently, because as we all know, once you get accustomed to the ease with which you can exchange crypto with somebody else on Earth, for anybody who's ever tried to make a bank transfer, either domestically or internationally, from any country to any country, you understand that this is the beginning of something big.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add, from my point of view, I see, Web3 as, embedded more as embedded finance, so I think, like every service can be now connected with a payment. It started with crypto. If you are crypto long enough and you open your mind, you actually see NFTs or any, let's say, digital assets which you own directly, coming very, very soon. So I remember when we started in CoinFirm, and we discussed, okay, what does it mean to the crypto, the blockchain space. It actually was quite clear that at some point this will come, NFT will come, right? I mean, you have the digital space, and you have also, like, if you treat digital space as a market, right, so currently it's almost disconnected with the real world at some point, because it's not so easy to kind of transfer the real world objects into digital space and own them in this way. And currently we have this linkage, right? So it's almost like, embedded finance, linking the real object into digital virtual space. That's something which is revolutionary, I think, right? And obviously, there's huge risks connected to this, which we need to analyze. Obviously, this is what we do, right? And this is what my angle would be always. What does it mean from the wider perspective when we're talking about cross-border transfer, embedded finance, art to this, and etc. So we still, I think, early in this process, but I think overall it's very exciting.
Thanks for sharing.
The one thing I would just love to jump in and add is the other part of ownership, the other part of NFTs beyond ownership, is just the authenticity and the provenance. And as we push towards a future internet, I think that this provides some strong protections for people. And I think largely if I read an article that I think is from the New York Times, I would love to see that it is from the New York Times, and that it's been signed, and that I know where this source came from. In a world of deep fakes, I want to know that video you put out as an NFT, so I know it was by you. And so if a video comes out that this deep fakes you can say, hey, all of my NFTs have all of my videos have NFTs backing them. I didn't make that video. And I just think that the proof of authenticity is just as important as the proof of ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that one feature, which we don't talk about much because we have, as a market, as an industry, yet to deliver, I think, really on it, is interoperability as well. Something we're quite focused on in games, just because as gamers, we think, the holy grail of gaming is if you can take your content that you've spent all your time modding and personalizing, and then bring it to another game, from one game to another, because that's just something that's never been possible before. But thanks to NFTs and a little cooperation amongst us developers, I think we can do it.
For us at IKEA, I think it's also very cool future to investigate, because just imagine, we own not only physical rights to our furniture and designs, but also digital rights to millions of furniture in all their iterations throughout the history. And if you can imagine the world of the future where, we even more than today, we could have this second life, or maybe the primary life in digital realm, we will be surrounded by a lot of objects that will only exist in their digital form, or primarily. And then this creates a really new economy where, like you just mentioned, the intellectual rights, property rights, but also the exchangeability will function in a completely different way than they do today. And so that's very exciting. I see one question here. We will go back to the questions from the audience at the end of this session, but there's one question that I'd like to ask you. Maybe Chris, you could answer that. There is this question from a person who asks, besides digital collectibles like trading cards and art, what would be the other use cases for NFTs, and how can they support the blockchain ecosystem as a whole? We've mentioned a few, but maybe you could throw a few other ideas.
Yeah, and so I think the future, and by the future, I mean the short-term future of NFTs provide utility. And it's actually very obvious to think about utility in games. You buy a sword, it gives you a +1. But I also think that there's just this real life utility where you buy the NFT and you get access to the event. You show up to concerts and you get proof of attendance for being at the concert, and that comes as an NFT. And then you have proof of fandom in that case. And if you collect 5 concerts, the artist can reward you with special merch or maybe another NFT. And so I think there's a lot of bringing the digital NFT space into the physical space. And there's just a lot of opportunity there. And I can probably talk about it for hours, but I'll leave it there and see if someone wants to elaborate.
I would add on to that, the excitement, frankly, that comes from, somebody going and collecting all of those sort of digital stamps of going to the concerts, but then being able to translate that into, a fan collection that they can then pass on to somebody else who didn't have the chance to go to all those concerts, but wants the benefit reward that comes from having done that. So the fact that you end up with a liquid marketplace for fans to be able to share that passion actually is really important. And I think that, we come from a very sort of open source software mentality. So I think, our DNA is thinking about keeping this open and sharing this because we believe that the market will grow as a result, and therefore our business will also grow, as opposed to trying to build walls around it and make sure I'm, this protocol is mine, I'm controlling all these users and not sharing them with anybody else. Because frankly, I think that's short-sighted at this point.
And that totally speaks to like, how does this all benefit the ecosystem, which is when the NFTs are on the blockchain, they're very composable, and everyone can do fun stuff with it. And I use this example also, like I've been to every Kanye West tour. I have no proof of it. I could have an NFT of every single one of it. And then what could developers do knowing about my fandom?
Great. I have one more quote that I would like to add into this discussion panel. And this is something that I was asked actually before this conference started. And I thought it would give an interesting angle into the NFT space. And let me start with the quote first. So DAOs and NFTs living on the internet, independently from any major jurisdictions, they often exceed the legislative frameworks, which may generate legal uncertainty. Do you gentlemen see this as a risk or actually as an opportunity? And maybe I'd like to start with Pavel now, since you, Pavel, are representing this risk mitigation blockchain analytics angle. How do you see this?
I mean, if you would ask me like 10 years ago what I think about cross-border transaction, anonymous, of art and etc., I would say, that's crazy, right? I think, that's completely, if we're just talking about, in particular art, if we talk about gaming, every exciting thing which Rob and Chris said, from the compliance perspective, it's nightmare, right? And we are not talking about only about where is the jurisdiction, which I think is important, but at the same time, is the real value? I mean, is the value of this non-fungible token or actually it's a separate transfer of value within this non-fungible token between different parties which are anonymous, So I think the entire ecosystem will be growing very, very fast in the near future, but at the same time it will be at some point stopped by the regulations, or let's say kind of adjusted. We see this with cryptocurrency at the beginning. Now we see with the DeFi space, which here you can see that we actually providing AML for DeFi space. And like I'm just actually almost on a weekly basis calling with European Commission, have calls with European Commission, Financial Action Task Force. The DeFi space, peer-to-peer transactions is critical, right? And it means that if we add to this non-fungible tokens, which are effectively, peer-to-peer transactions, or, decentralized platform connected with something which is, which value is actually almost like unrelated to anything, right? Then we're creating huge risks, right? And this risk needs to be addressed. Luckily, how I compare, and I spent 15 years in traditional financial sector, when I compare what we can do in terms of analytics for the crypto space, for the blockchain space, I think we are able to address this risk in principle, right? And obviously we need to have consensus from the market that other participants want to use it, right? And want to actually be transparent in terms of, or maybe not transparent, but they want to be identified, and the transfer should be identified. Otherwise, I see markets like OpenSea, which is huge risk in terms of regulations, in terms of money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, human trafficking, etc., right? So we need to do the cleanup act and see what's going to be the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Robbie, Chris, any thoughts on that angle?
Yeah, I mean, that was such a serious answer and such a good answer. And so I'll just take a slightly different thing, which is I'm trying not to say this, but like I think regulation is often hostile to innovation, and this is not even just a decentralized Web3 problem. Like even if you build a Web2 app now, it's like there's GDPR. There's a UK version of GDPR. There's a California version of GDPR. I think there's a Brazil version of GDPR. And Web2 apps are very easy to build. They're cheap. The infrastructure exists. It's actually very hard to comply with all of those privacy policies all at the same time. And so I think globally, we need to get our act together and make some good laws.
What I love about our industry is almost like everyone is building, nobody really care, then the market is becoming mature, everyone cares, that's kind of cycles, and that's I love it, actually. It's like pushing the boundaries of regulations as well, right?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that regulation is something that ultimately we always welcome, because regulation helps us to set standards, and it helps to make sure that everybody plays by a reasonable set of rules. I think to this point, we've been relatively self-governing, but one of the things I think that is held back, and why, like the IPO of Coinbase, for example, is a great signal for the market, is it's helping us to set more precedent and more regulation as to how the traditional financial markets view blockchain-related businesses. And that's important, because we can't exist forever as a parallel universe. There has to be interconnections. And so I think this is, the beginning of the more mainstreaming of blockchain-related tech.
But at the same time, I think this creates a huge challenge for the current forms of governance that exist in this world. Because, I mean, just think about it. One of the biggest innovation that Bitcoin did was it enabled the ownership of money to not only persons and legal entities, but to software. So today, thanks to Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies out there, software can own money. Software can participate with us in transactions without us knowing about it. And I mean, how are we going to regulate that? Having AI agents running on the web and doing stuff. There are some questions here in the forum I can see about the risks of NFTs being, sold and purchased by bots and all sort of things. I mean, this is the new reality we are moving in, and
Yes.
I see this. We will need cybernetic governance models to embrace all those changes and difficulties. So that's a really big challenge.
For sure. I think what you will notice, though, is that regardless of where the regulation borders are set up, so to speak, industry will have a tendency to push those borders as hard as it possibly can. And I think of things like financial trading, where trading houses put their computers physically as close as possible to the exchange so that the cables are shorter. So these kind of things exist in current markets already, and I think that we'll see this kind of everybody looking to try to position themselves to run the most efficiently, and within the loosest definition of the rules as possible, because that's kind of how people run their lives anyway, regardless of whether it's on the Web 3.0 or not.
Exactly. Well, I promised to the organizers that we will leave some space for the questions from the audience. So I've seen a few interesting ones, and Victoria, Daniel, if you have seen something you would like to promote to our guests, because they don't necessarily see all the questions, please feel free. There was one question here related to digital avatars. So maybe I'd like to have Chris and Robbie commenting on this. Stephanie wrote, beyond gaming, the next destination will be fashion. Gucci has already released its first pair of digital sneakers. The big groups like LVMH are all looking into NFTs for digital fashion and accessories. We will all be very well dressed avatars. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll go quick, Robbie, and then I'll kick it over to you, who are probably the expert here. But yeah, yes. I think it's when I said before, like, find an NFT that you love. I think digital fashion is a great example, and especially when we have the interoperability that Robbie was talking about, where I can take my Gucci shoes to Fortnite and then Roblox, and and then I can drive my F1 car with them. It's super important. The other thing I'll say is I'm also excited about AR fashion and the rumors of the Apple glasses or whatever device might be around. And so you may actually just be walking around your city and looking at people and seeing these digital fashions, which could also be sold as NFTs.
And before you balk at the idea of spending money on digital fashion in addition to your physical fashion, keep in mind the digital fashion will never wear out, and it will last forever. And also, if you think about it, with the right kind of smart contract, your digital fashion can also evolve like a subscription. So there's no reason you can't pay Gucci for your shoes to become more fashionable each season, right? It's just a different, it's a different model that self evolves. So there's all kinds of things that you can do, and I think brands will have a really fun time embracing the new tools.
I have also, Pavel, I have also a question that might be interesting for you from a blockchain analytics, a risk mitigation perspective, and the new ownership of digital data. A person is asking here in the chat, I would love to know any practical use cases for fractionalized NFTs, which are tradable and possibly regulated. Have you had any customers looking into these fractionalized NFTs and the way of regulating this?
Yeah, and I think that's NFTs. It's a word right now which is used, but I think the future will be the fractional ownership of NFTs, or fractional ownership of anything which is digital, right? So yes, we have a lot of interest in this space. It's definitely the first choice here is the jurisdiction, which the contractual side of where is the NFT created, or what is the law which is governing specific let's say NFT or the underlying contract. I think that's critical. I think currently it's omitted. It's it's actually not clear. So that's something which is definitely needs to be addressed. And I know that some of the jurisdictions are looking actively into properly regulating this, and actually also having a view what does it mean. But in principle, you have the civil law and you have contractual law to govern NFTs. And I would strongly encourage people to read, what they are buying and how they are buying, because at the same time we see a lot of, scam, ransomwares in the NFT space, right? And without proper understanding what is the law behind, considering international aspect of blockchain space, it's almost impossible at the moment to recover any of the stolen goods or anything which is ransomware in NFT, right? So basically, you pay me, or I'm gonna create another NFT of your good, right? And this type of stories, right? Or that's big market at the moment as well.
There's also a direct question here to you, Robbie, where a person is curious about the possible merger of gaming and education. Let me read this question. Robbie, talking about transferring value and creating equitable access and inclusion to decentralized worlds, have you ever thought in designing a school in the mode of a game so that kids could game and be educated at the same time? This would allow independence from governmental policies, unions, etc., stopping education in developing countries. What are your thoughts on that?
Two thoughts. So first, to some background, we looked into this and we created education-related games as a mobile developer for many years. Education is an incredible field, but it's very challenging. And coming from the purely commercial side, similar to other types of government contracting, it really is learning a completely new business development and marketing organization to be able to figure out how to navigate working with schools. I think it's possible to create independent educational products, but what we were hoping is to create products where we can work with schools and provide digital tools that can be supplementary in schools, because we felt that that would have the most chance of success when teachers can help to deploy these kind of solutions. But that said, dealing with schools and jurisdictions and stuff, I mean, even if you just look at the US, for example, and you think about how many school districts there are in cities and states and towns and counties, and it's a nightmare, honestly, to navigate. So I would love to do it, but the challenge is enormous, enormous.
I've thought about this over the years. I think there's a big opportunity in historical fiction. And so you might read a book that is fiction, but set in a timepiece. And so now at the end, who the king was in 1300. And I often think that like SimCity was maybe the most profound educational software of all time. It's like how I learned how cities run. And then since then we've had Civ and we've had Assassin's Creed. And so I do think like the youth is learning through gaming. But it's more, rather than direct education, it's more learning history through historical fiction and gaming.
I agree. Well, it's like when we look at this idea of avatars, because obviously NFTs are being widely used for avatars. CryptoPunks is one of the most, highly traded NFT projects, and they're mostly being used for avatars. And avatars are something that I think a certain generation of users really just doesn't even need explaining why one would want to have an avatar, because they've conducted so much of their life online. And that's not my generation, that's Gen Z and the millennials. But I think the more we all spend in the metaverse, as Chris said, whether the metaverse is online in different formats or whether it's an actual 3D immersive environment, the more that these kind of representations of ourselves will matter.
Yeah, I could wrap it up with one thought. I mean, it all could potentially lead to the new definition of reputation going forward. I mean, if you can imagine, like you guys have given examples of digitalizing experiences or participations in events via the non-fungible tokens, this could theoretically create a new layer in the Web 3.0 of something that we could refer to as meta reputation, where things we do, things we say, we publish, we participate, they are building in a way our digital but non-mutable digital footprint behind that could become our meta reputation. So that, but we don't have enough time. Mark,
there's huge risk in this, what you just said, and I'm not sure if we agree on this.
However, I think it already exists, and it's called a credit score.
Definitely. But this session is just too short to embrace all the great ideas, and I'm super happy to have possibility to speak to all three of you. For all the participants, you can easily find all four of us at LinkedIn. So feel free to search for us and reach out, and I will give the voice back to the studio, to Victoria and Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marek, and thank you, Chris, Robbie, and Pavel. Thank you once again for joining us today and sharing your views on NFTs and what's going on in the market. I want to thank also the amazing group of attendees that we have now. They have been super active in the chat. I don't know if you, Marek, could find the questions, because we had a lot of comments, and that's good, right? Because then it's a way to know that people are getting a lot out of the session. So thank you once again.